Okay, and I want to thank Patrick and Bijou for inviting us. We were, you know, reluctantly willing to do it, and then when we got started doing it, it was incredibly interesting, and we had no idea, A, how much material we have, and actually, or how intellectually exciting it would be to us to think about these issues. So you've got a deliberation convert or two, but in a very particular way. So I want to say two things to start, and whenever Susan gets here, she'll talk as much as she wants to. But the first, I think, is that what our general contribution is, apart from the pathetic fact that we end up representing the Africa contingent here, and is that ridiculous or what? And it just shows no, American academia is so uninterested in Africa and has been for the last 30 years that it is painful. And if somebody wanted to invest money in something serious, that's what they would invest in. Okay, but so partly we are trying to reflect the way in which I think African materials differ from those from India and the other places that have dominated the thinking about these issues. But the second thing is that I think there's a sort of philosophical / academic style contribution that we can make, which is that there's sort of two ways you can start in thinking about how to improve things. And one is to think about an ideal situation, an ideal speech situation, an ideal form of deliberative democracy, an ideal form of participatory governance, an ideal form of development, and then look around for how to create it. The other way to go is to start with what people already do. And I guess my feeling is that political science in particular is dominated by the notion that we should set up models of ideal things and then figure out how to create them. And as a sociologist, but also as a sort of philosophical starting point, I have very much the view that you ought to understand how things actually are before you start, or at least as part of trying to change or transform things. So the starting point Susan and I used, and I think there's actually a very smart point for those of you who are idealistically committed to deliberation as a form of transformative practice, which is that the degree to which new interventions in a conversation mean what they do depends on the existing baseline. So in a community where women never talk, for a woman to stand up and say anything is a radical, radical act. In a community where people all, here, Susan, stand with me. I'm already, yeah, it's all right. We get along unbelievably well. So this is, yeah, fine. She smokes and I don't, so.
Virgin smokes too.
Ah, incredible, wonderful. Well, then you will have confab opportunities. So, but I think there's a real point, which is that if you want to understand in what ways new kinds of deliberation could be transformative, there's both the point that Arjun was making, which is that gradual transformations in what exist are likely to be the forms that cultural innovation, that might be the root. But the other thing is that for things have radical meanings against the background of existing practice. And so without understanding the background of existing practice, I really don't think you can think effectively about deliberation. Okay, then I have one comment about this PowerPoint, which is that Susan and I had written the paper, had an incredibly fun time doing it, realized we had more than enough material for a book, which, since we're already partway through a different book, we can't do, at least not right now. But so wrote the paper in a frenzy of pleasure with all our data and material and so forth, and then last night realized that it would be even better and rhetorically more fun to reverse the order of what we talk about. So this PowerPoint Susan has never seen, because she had an early morning breakfast appointment, couldn't stay up late enough last night.
Sit down.
No, you're
just
not.
sit here if you need
No, because you're going to talk. Don't
I
sit.
might have to stand for half an hour.
Yeah, okay, 20 minutes, because 5 minutes are already gone. Okay, so just to warn those of you who did read the paper that this is the same paper, but in reverse order. Okay, oh, and I need my glasses. Oh, they're in my, all right. All right, so now to commence. Our overall argument is, let's start with existing practices. Second, to try to give a feel of the way in which existing forms of inequality in the African societies we know, and all our data is from Malawi, but we actually know a fair amount of East and Southern Africa, do not have the same feel, at least at the local and village level, that I think they have in the large peasant societies that have a more sort of feudal quality in their landlord peasant systems.
And the strong state.
Yeah, and have much, much stronger, more penetrating states than African societies do. And third, and this really is the punchline that in this form of the talk I'm not even sure we'll be able to get to, but that settings understood as modern, where we have been studying things, and these are the settings that are likely to be constructed by any intervention meant to create community-based development, deliberative democracies, these CDD projects that Celestin, is that his name, was talking about. That's what you're going to get if you do that. So it's sort of, we're also making a rhetorical intervention to say, watch out, because you are invoking things you don't even know you're invoking when you enter these situations. Okay.
You're looking confused. I think it's what you get in the formal setting is not the deliberation that they think they're going to get.
Yes. You get something that looks very unequal and very much like school. Okay. So the first point we want to make, and this is really is, again, a sort of rhetorical point, is that there is, in the African setting, a tremendous amount of very energetic, very vociferous, very impassioned, and remarkably open deliberation already, so that the sort of spontaneous local, what you could imagine as the indigenous settings, really do involve, it is just not the case that people can't speak up for themselves. They speak up for themselves a ton. So here's a situation, a wife and her friend attack the husband's girlfriend in the market. And there are many such incidents in these amazing diaries Susan's collected, in which women assert themselves. And so we can't read all of this. This is in the paper, but here's a case, the wife and her friend wait until the husband and the girlfriend come out of a rest house. They hang out in the market for much of a day to catch this. Then they go after them. The husband runs away. They catch the girlfriend. They beat her to a pulp in the middle of the market. And in this case, which is somewhat unusual, seriously injure her. And then afterward, you get an enormous amount of discussion in the market. Some people said the women were wrong, for they have beaten an innocent person because the girl did not propose the man, but it is the man who had proposed her, and the woman should have beat the husband. Others said that the girl is a wrong person because she knows that the person who is proposing her has got a family, and she did not refuse him, so she must receive the reward from her behavior. In other words, they debated in terms of the morality of where the husband's money ought to go, who has a right, and then it can be less violent. And here's a case where a woman consults other women in her church women's group. Susan, do you want to describe this one? Mm-hmm. Okay, and there's the